With us a day early because of the 4th of July holiday tomorrow is Denis Campbell. He's editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine. Also, in the context of today's topic, author of Egypt Unshackled. It is a great roadmap of how those 18 days of revolution in Egypt took place. Denis, before we get into the details and looking forward, let's get up to speed on the last 4 to 6 weeks in Egypt.
Not just the last 4 to 6 weeks, but the last 4 to 6 hours. Of course, the deadline set by the military to the Morsi government to resolve the people's demands has come and gone. So virtually every feed, Al Jazeera Live, all of the broadcasters are keeping an eye on both Tahrir Square and the presidential palace just to the north of it as to what might be going on in terms of the military taking action against the government. What has happened is that over a long period of time now, a number of weeks, the growing anniversary and Egyptian revolutions we're seeing now tend to follow anniversary dates. They had the original one on the 25th of January back in 2011, which was a police national holiday. So they decided that since Tunisia had just fallen, they would also launch a huge protest on a day when most members of the police were taking a holiday. Now we were at the 1-year anniversary on the 26th of June of Mohammed Morsi taking power, having been elected the president of Egypt after the fall of Hosni Mubarak. So with the economy basically in a shambles, the vast majority of the population under the age of 30 and not able to make more, there's a huge percentage of the population unable to make more than about $2 a day. There are bread lines, there are petrol lines, there are just horrific financial conditions. The people took to the street again on the anniversary of his taking office to demand that something be done and that he resign.
What does it look like will happen? I mean, as we said, I was watching the video just before coming over to the studio of what's going on in Egypt. What do we expect to happen next? I mean, it seems up in the air. There's the possibility of civil war being discussed in earnest. What key points should we be paying attention to?
Well, civil war is a very key point that you should be looking at because unlike in the situation of Mubarak, who was continuing an unbroken line of military dictatorship, a very large percentage of the population did lawfully elect Morsi as their president. So what you're seeing from him, basically bunkered inside of the presidential palace, is a saying that he's not going, that the military wants him, they're going to have to go through the people. Now, granted, it is a much smaller demonstration than what you're seeing in Tahrir Square demanding that he leave, but there are several thousand people in another part of Cairo that are protesting, demanding that he stay. And the military yesterday had a rather unique show when it was actually on Monday afternoon when they announced the 48-hour deadline for Morsi to do something, i.e., and basically the way the military has phrased this, they said they must meet the demands of the people. So either that could be a more open and inclusive government, a new coalition government, or it could very well be that he's taken out and told to resign. Now, the military tends to move very, very slowly and very, very carefully. If you remember back to 2.5 years ago during the revolution, they did not fire on the people because they feel that they are representatives of the people, unlike Bashar al-Assad in Syria, unlike, strongmen in Tunisia, in Libya with Gaddafi. The military knows that it can sit and bide its time as leaders come and go. Because at the end of the day, they control the economy. They control 40% of the businesses. It's a tremendous amount of wealth stored in that upper class.
What's your sense of U.S. and British potential involvement going forward? In other words, if A happens, what is the likely reaction going to be from the U.S. and the U.K.?
Well, there was a telephone conversation, I'm not sure exactly of the timeline on that. It might have been today, it might have been yesterday, between President Obama and Morsi. And then the transcription I read coming out of the White House press office made it sound as though, even though Morsi has said President Obama supports him, President Obama's statement coming out of the press office was very clear to say that he supports no political party, that we want, a clear democratic government in Egypt. Now, the problem that we've had with this Morsi government is that it has been very fundamentalist and very Islamist. And the people of Egypt, the 80 million, 85 million people strong, it's a very moderate, more centrist state. So this is why you see the protests that you see. I mean, women have been completely discounted, yet they played such a huge part in the original uprising 2.5 years ago. So it's a very, very unstable situation right now. Civil war is not out of the picture at all there or any place across the Middle East, because it is a bit of a tinderbox right now.
In terms of the kind of lack of consistency between, as you mentioned, the more extremist government compared to a more moderate population, are there lines of correlation to the situation in Iran, where we know that the vast majority of the population, particularly young people, are very moderate, and that is not reflected in the leadership?
You're going to see some of that here as well. I would tell you, though, that even in Iran, it is a much more religious society, I would say, than what you see on a day-to-day basis in Egypt. I mean, Egypt, had a very large Coptic Christian population, was really a melting pot, less the case there. Something else to keep in mind is also with the instability that you're seeing in that region, you do have the chance for a lot of splinter sort of groups to form. But I don't see that happening in Egypt. I think Egypt is going to actually break down to and battle between those who are for the Islamist government of Morsi and those who are against it. And those who are against it vastly outnumber. I think you're going to see probably more of a coalition approach if the military is patient enough to allow it to happen.
All right, we're going to keep following it. Make sure to check out Denis's book, Egypt Unshackled, the roadmap to how the 18 days of revolution occurred. We've been speaking with Denis Campbell. He's editor-in-chief of UK Progressive Magazine, also host of Worldview with Denis Campbell on YouTube, and Bookview TV, also on YouTube. Denis, thanks as always, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thank you, and have a great holiday.